Hello, chismosas y chismosos, and welcome back to Bay Area Housewife of True Crime, where I like to tell the stories of the real cucuys and lloronas of the world. I'm Audrey, a paralegal turned stay-at-home mom who loves true crime. The cases I cover are wild, topics may be triggering. Viewer and listener discretion is strongly advised. The people mentioned are innocent until proven guilty in court. With all that being said, grab your hot Cheetos and let's get started on today's case. Since 1910, Memphis Junior Academy in Memphis, Tennessee, has been a Seventh-day Adventist institution that offers pre-K through 12th grade education. Any given year, this academy has about 100 students. It's located in a residential area east of Memphis next to a church, in East Memphis next to a church and a cemetery. From 2008 until her death of 2001, 39-year-old Susan York had been the academy's principal. She was both loved and hated. Peter Hunter, an Academy alumni, said that she was a person who was very much involved with the students. She cared deeply about the development of her students. Peter loved Mrs. York. However, in a very dark contrast, current 16-year-old Eduardo Marmolejo would later testify that he did not like Mrs. York. In fact, Mrs. York made him angry. So angry that when in May of 2011, when his mom told him that he was going to be returning to the academy the next fall for the next school year, he started planning her murder. For months, Eduardo had studied close combat battle tactics, searches of how to stab someone to prevent the victim from screaming were found on his computer. On the morning of August 10, 2011, Eduardo Marmolejo went to his most hated teacher's classroom at a time he knew she would be alone at approximately 11 a.m. on the third day of school. He was loathing this time to come that this real-life cucuy made sure to sharpen his 3.5-inch long, 1-inch wide folding knife before he stabbed Mrs. York to death 9 times on various parts of her body. The autopsy report for this homicide by stabation mentioned her jugular vein and spinal cord was cut and her skull was fractured. After completing his plan, Eduardo made sure to change his clothes and flush the murder weapon down the school toilet. Mrs. York's lifeless body was found at around 11:20 a.m. in a pool of her own blood. The police were called. The parents of all the students were called, notified, and asked they pick up their children immediately. Eduardo's mom told reporters, and I quote, "We are with Jesus and he has given us the strength to survive this." The SDA Goodsville, Tennessee conference president wrote in a public statement as follows: "This is a very sad day for all of us in this community and particularly for the Seventh-day Adventist family. We are shocked and saddened over the tragedy that has befallen Suzette York. He was not only an administrator, but also a colleague and a friend and a fellow believer. Our prayers are lifted on behalf of her husband as well as the staff and students at Memphis Junior Academy. We are praying for those impacted by this tragedy." I've covered a lot of SDA cases, and this is the most I've ever seen said from an SDA spokesperson about a tragedy. I'm very sorry to this lady. I'm glad that she got the support of the church, and quite frankly, I do believe Eduardo Marmolejo is a real life monster. I do wish, however, they said in support for Suzette's tragedy, like how they did for her, they would do the same for the hundreds, if not thousands, of survivors of sexual abuse at the hands of other real-life monsters who liked to hide in churches. Eduardo Marmolejo was 16 when he killed Suzette York, but was treated as an adult in the court of law. Eduardo was shortly arrested by Shelby County authorities and charged on suspicion of murder. In juvenile court, a psychologist testified that Eduardo was not in his right mind and unable to communicate rationally, and lived in a fantasy world where he truly believed he was a soldier. However, further psychological evaluations performed subsequently in adult court deemed Eduardo mentally capable to stand trial. In February of 2012, he was officially indicted and charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutor Reggie Henderson was able to provide a motive for the killing, forensic evidence, a murder weapon, his confession, the searches on his computer, and all of that was very strong in the people's favor. By the admission of Eduardo's own criminal defense attorney, Leslie Ballin, he was a, quote, loner with psychological issues stemming from issues from his childhood. If that were everybody's excuse, we'd all be up in there with Eduardo on murder for trial. In September of 2013, 18-year-old Eduardo Marmolejo accepted a plea deal of guilty of second-degree murder of his private school principal, Suzette York, in exchange for 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole. With the possibility of parole. With Judge W. Mark Ward gave him the opportunity to speak, Eduardo told the court, "I apologize for my bad behavior. It was wrong what I did. I am not the same man I used to be. I'm a better man," unquote. His mother, Marcela Rodriguez, told the press, and I quote, "We are with Jesus, and he has given us the strength to survive this." Mrs. York taught science and math. Before becoming principal in 2008, she left behind a grieving husband who, from all accounts, adored her. Mrs. York did not deserve to die. Suzette York was born Suzette Stanley in Canada. She attended Pacific Union College in Inglewood, California, from 1980 and through 1983, where she graduated with her bachelor's in, quote, multiple subjects, a degree for students pursuing elementary education, unquote. She dedicated her life to educating children, and her life was taken by one of them, a real-life cucuy named Eduardo Marmolejo. He'll be around 50 years old when he gets out of prison. We've reached the end of today's episode of Bay Area Housewife of True Crime. Thank you so much for coming down the rabbit hole where I currently live. As always, I accept and respect your opinions. I welcome all questions, comments, case suggestions. Call me, beat me at yayareahousewife@gmail.com. I'll see you chismosas y chismosos in the next episode. Adios. And happy Father's Day to all the good dads out there, especially my husband.